Okay. All right. So we all know that government under the education strategy plan. My name is Kofi Asare. I work with Africa Education Watch. I'm the executive director. Under the education strategic plan, Ghana has committed to ensure that all children of school-going age, regardless of their status, whether they are disabled or not, are able to access quality basic education and secondary education, relevant outcomes. Among others, the Ghana government launched the inclusive education policy to ensure that in providing equitable access to basic and secondary education, government is inclusive. The needs of people with special needs, people with disabilities are factored into the journey of education for all. And so inclusive access to education has been a key policy issue within government's education strategy, education journey. As part of civil society's work to continuously review performance, engage the system to enable the necessary remedies to be taken to improve policy performance, Eduwatch and CREDA undertook to undertake a review of inclusive education policy and its implementation in some selected schools in the northern region. Over 100 schools were sampled. We wanted to find out how our schools are disability friendly in terms of infrastructure, in terms of pedagogy, in terms of general practices in the school environment, and the extent to which the schools are accommodating persons with disabilities. Bear in mind that the policy supports inclusion, which means that if you are deaf, you are physically challenged, you are all supposed to have space or find space in regular public schools because of the inclusive approach to mainstreaming or providing education for children with special needs. The research found that significantly, education infrastructure is not disability friendly. Over 68% of toilet facilities identified in these schools did not have common disabled entrance to permit students who were physically challenged to actually ramp on with their wheelchairs. These are the most fundamental or most basic facilities that can be available in school. And so when it comes to inclusive pedagogies, we realize that the teachers also were not fully equipped and were not delivering teaching with inclusive pedagogies. In some, there are issues with quality and access when it comes to inclusion. In the area of assistive devices, and teaching and learning resources required to provide quality inclusive education, there were very severe constraints in our schools. Now we realize that the situation in our schools where there are very, very limited system capacities for accommodating students with special needs is driven by inadequate financing of the special education budget. If you look in the past 5 years, we've barely crossed 1% of the education budget allocation going to special and inclusive education. In 2026, only about 0.2% of the education budget was committed to inclusive and special education, against an expectation of 2% to ensure enhanced inclusive access. So we are calling on the Ministry of Education that while we recognize the allocation of 15 million cedis, an amendment of the Get Fund law to accommodate allocations to special needs or special schools. And again, while we appreciate the government's rollout of the free tertiary education for persons with disability, it is important that one, the government finalizes the current draft of the inclusive education policy and mainstreams all these important interventions into policy, including the free sanitary pads for girls. These are all inclusive policies. It is also important for the government to increase its allocation of the budget to inclusive education to at least 2% to enable enhanced resource availability to finance inclusive education policies. We have called on the Ghana Education Service to enhance its training of its staff in inclusive pedagogies and how to manage basic schools inclusively, including skills to detect mild to low level of disability at early levels within the education system. We have also called on the government to ensure that, as much as practicable, basic inclusion skills like sign language is mainstream into the curriculum of our teacher education institutions, so that we can replicate what is happening in the health sector in many countries, including in Ghana, where health personnel are being trained in how to use sign language to communicate as part of their training. I think that will be a significant value addition, not only to inclusive pedagogy, but ensuring that our schools, our basic schools and secondary schools are sufficiently inclusive and attractive to learners with special needs. We have also called on the government to enhance the supply of assistive devices, teaching and learning resources required in our special schools. Most importantly, as government is constructing one complete basic school under the DACF every year to ensure that there's enhanced access to basic education and also supporting and removing schools under trees, it is important that the government